Microcurrent facial rejuvenation, been around for a long time. I was doing it in my practice in 1986. I learned how to do it a couple of years earlier. I found some old papers in my downstairs basement, which I guess is the only place where a basement is. And in the box was the very first ad that I submitted for a product that I created. And it was in 1981, and I advertised in Chiropractic Products magazine for Q-tip wands to do non-surgical facelifts, which is what it was called back then. And after about 2 or 3 months, the medical profession came down on that terminology, saying we're the only ones who can have the word non-surgical or surgical in any description. So you have to call it something else. And that's when the name kind of morphed into microcurrent facial rejuvenation. Nobody really owns that term. So in 1981, I was already making products, and the first one was for facial rejuvenation. That's how long I've been around and been involved in this kind of technology. My personal philosophy has always been the technique that you use must respect the anatomy of the face and also the physiology of the body. And what separates what I do from the majority of the other companies, we all have electrical engineers. We all have guys that know how to hook a battery up and make a circuit and how to do things. But not everybody understands what happens to the body when that electricity hits it. That's the study of physiology and biophysiology. And that's not a class that an electrical engineer takes, or even a biomedical engineer isn't necessarily trained in physiology, anatomy, organic, inorganic chemistry, all the classes that you would take. And I've got hundreds of hours in those. I've even dissected a human body. So I'm really intimately familiar with what happens when the current touches the body. And I'm very particular about companies that make claims that they don't really make sense, either electrically or physiologically. So everything that I will ever teach you, you will never be embarrassed by sharing it with someone else. They'll never be able to say, well, no, that's not true, because it is. Luckily, the human body hasn't changed much since I graduated from school, so the principles that I adhere to are still have to be adhered to today by all of the companies. And we'll get into some of this, some of the bogus technology or bogus claims, or not exactly true, or they're saying the right things but their machine doesn't do that. We'll kind of get into all of that. But over time, I've really broken microcurrent facial rejuvenation into 3 areas. And I don't have it on this chart, but I've come to use this triangle as a symbol of what we're talking about. And the first and foremost is working the muscles of facial expression. And some companies worry about the muscles of mastication. I completely ignore those because they don't do any facial movement at all. So I only work on the muscles of facial expression. But there's much more to it than that. When you examine somebody's face, you want to look at the deficiencies. Is gravity causing pockets of fluid retention under the eyes, along here? Is maybe a fat pad moving down and causing a problem in the jowl? Are they a person who is constantly squinting and causing the eyes, the furrows in the brow? And we have ways to address all of those. And we all know that at about age 25, we seriously begin to decrease the amount of collagen and elastin. You add to that the effect of gravity to these facial muscles that, the facial muscles are the only muscles in the body that don't have bone-to-bone attachment. You know, these muscles in my hand, if I grab something that's 100 pounds and I'm strong enough, I can lift that up because the muscles are firmly anchored from origin to insertion. That's not in the face. The facial muscles are completely different. Most of the facial muscles are connective tissue to connective tissue. Some of them are bone to connective tissue, but there are no facial muscles of expression that are bone to bone. The reason for that, we have evolved and developed, along with other mammals, the ability to communicate without saying a word. And I'm communicating right now. And I can change that with just a tiny change in where my mouth is or what I do up here. You get that message. If I'm happy, I'm upset, I'm really upset, I'm disgusted. All of those emotions are created by these muscles that can move because they're not bone to bone. If they were bone to bone, we would have no expression at all. So the good news is we can communicate non-verbally, but the bad news is gravity and the lack of elastin and collagen causes our face to lose its tone. And the purpose of microcurrent facial rejuvenation is to replace the tone in those muscles. There's a specific way to do that. But then you also, as a professional, have to address what you know are the other deficiencies, which is collagen, elastin, and accumulation of fluids. You can help with all of those things. So I've created this triangle type of system that lets you plug in, you evaluate the client, but plug in the different services that address those deficiencies that you know are going to be there over age 25 and can help younger people maintain their collagen and elastin, that soft suppleness for a lot longer by going through a process. So it's not just for people who want to look better, it's also for ones who want to stay looking better for as long as they possibly can. So this chart represents the triangle that I had mentioned before, where we're working on the muscles of facial expression. We're using what I've come to call an ion pump mask that delivers product into the skin and also applies microcurrent over the entire face. And using a product that I created called the Beauty Blade, which is really just a gua sha tool to really work and move fluid from pockets that naturally evolve as we get older. But people tend to get intimidated by the facial muscles. And I've discovered that most of the companies really don't pay particular attention to individual muscles, but just general areas of the face. But my technique, we're working each individual muscle of facial expression and in a particular direction. You can't just run the microcurrent wand over a muscle and expect something to happen, because that's not how it works. The muscles, you can tone or relax a muscle by how you work the tendon. You don't even worry about the belly of the muscle because it doesn't do anything as far as microcurrent. Again, in physiology, the study of how the body works, when you apply electricity to a muscle, it either completely fires and contracts or it's not activated at all. And microcurrent is such a low amount of energy that the muscle belly ignores it and it doesn't contract. But that doesn't mean you can't firm or relax the muscle, but you do it by working the tendon, the area that's known as the Golgi tendon organ, that are little nerve bundles inside the tendon. And the tendon attaches to the bone, or in the case of these muscles, to connective tissue. And by working these tendons in a particular direction, which I've, both in the chart that I've created and on this poster, we show you the direction to work those muscles to get them to tone or to get them to relax. There are only a couple of muscles that we ever want to relax. And that's the muscles up here and in between here. These are the muscles that do that kind of work. And some of us do that all the time. And sometimes it's a vision issue. We're squinting to try to see better. And sometimes that's just how you've heard the term resting bitch face. Sometimes people are just like that and don't realize it, but they're expressing that. And we can help with that. And we do that by stroking the muscles, the tendons that attach the muscles, away from each other. So you go away to relax, and you go toward to tone. And you do that with the pressure and the microcurrent that's coming through the wands that we use. So you're actually just working the muscle in very, very short strokes, just the tendon part of it. And we're really not worried about the belly of the muscles at all. So part one of the program is the facial rejuvenation through toning or relaxing the muscles. That's part one. Part two, we're going to put a mask on the face that's either been soaked in the saline water or in a particular product, because we want to drive that into the skin. We know that microcurrent stimulation alone will increase ATP and also elastin and collagen just on its own. But anything you put under the mask to help drive that product in just enhances the effect of it. To go back to the muscles briefly, when you do a complete microcurrent stimulation of the facial muscles, you get an immediate response, but it's not really dramatic. And it takes about 5 to 7 visits to get a really dramatic look on the face, and then you carry that through to about 12 to 15 visits. And it's all variable on the patient's starting point, where they are when they first come in, their age, do they smoke, their nutrition, and we'll actually get into the nutrition of microcurrent a little bit later. But so the client will feel a difference after the first visit, but it may not be dramatic, but they'll feel it as their skin feels a little bit tighter. But it's all three of these that work together to make it a complete success, and everybody's thrilled about the results. So the mask is applied, and this is about a 10-minute treatment. The advantage of this mask is that it's a continuous stimulation of microcurrent over this entire area. Other companies, you'll see them moving wands all over the face with gel all over the face. And they're moving the wands in an effort to get the microcurrent stimulation to increase ATP production. The problem with ATP production is that it only happens when the machine is on and underneath the electrodes. So when you're doing this side of the face and moving it around, nothing's happening over here. It's a complete waste of time. And as you move it over here, ATP has stopped being produced here, and now it's over here. So you're wasting time unless you can address the entire area that you want at the same time for the entire period. And you can only do that with a mask. And we've experimented with different types of masks, and about 4 months ago, I created this special electrode, and there's another electrode down here on the neck, and that forces the current to come through the mask and down to this electrode, and it forces the current through the entire mask. So unattended, the client just laying there for about 10 to 15 minutes, you're laying down collagen and elastin all over the face instead of just working one little tiny area for a few seconds and moving on to another. There's nothing more efficient or effective than this. But as long as the masks that we look at can be energized through an electrode system like that, it'll work just fine. And we'll test those a little later. The third part of the triangle is using this beauty blade. This entire device is an electrode. It's completely conductive. It's made on 3D printers that we have at the company. And you actually plug it into the Micro 5, put another electrode anywhere on the body to complete the circuit, and then this becomes a tool that you can move fluid around. And the idea is to move fluid up and into the main central lymph node repository. There are lymph nodes all along here and all along the face, but there's a major bundle here where you want to move everything to this area of the neck. This tool, because of the edges that I've created, makes it fantastic to work along the jowl line and also underneath the eyes to move that fluid down and into that zone area. And this can be used with a conductive media on the skin, any kind of gel that you have. And this only takes a few minutes to be a part of that triangle of treatment. But it's very important because it will help move. You know, these pockets are formed as we get older and gravity drops things down, and we tend to accumulate fluid there. And we can actually push this out, down and into that pocket where the body then drains it and it's eliminated as urine or through the liver. And so those are the three components that we focus on, and we have an exact solution for any of the problems that the client presents. Any questions?
You explained it really well. So. I don't think I have any questions.
You said in the beginning 5 to 7 visits. How long apart would you suggest scheduling them?
I would prefer they come in every day, but and most people will say 3 times a week. But the reality is, how many clients can make that time commitment to come in? You're really looking at 2 visits a week if you're lucky, but a lot of clients will commit to once a week. You have to be flexible with what their needs are, but I would prefer every day, but you can't do that. So it's...
So you would prefer every day for like 7 visits, and
yes.
then once a week, and then maybe once a month? Or
Yeah, or twice a week.
Okay.
Here's the thing about the science of what all of this really is. The client will feel immediate changes in their face from the stimulation. We know that it takes 30 days to lay down new collagen and elastin, whether you have a product on or not. So maximum benefits is going to be at the end of the facial schedule that you set up, and not at the beginning.